Should you pull for Ignis's FR and BT? His roles are a melee attacker, enchant and peril, support, battery, healer, and debuff evasion. Regroup his skill 1, it is an instant turn rate move that FR charges, healing the party by 50% of the max HP, healing the party again by 100% of his own initial brave, granting the party brave by 300% of the current HP, and granting the buff first aid for 15 turns. Quick recipe. His skill 2, I don't know why it's spelled like that. It is another instant turn rate move that FR charges, grants the party brave by 80% of his own max brave, and upgrades both his brave and HP command to their higher versions, I guess. And lastly, it will grant the buff Ambrosia for 9 turns. Let's get to what those brave and HP commands are upgraded to. Starting with the brave, it is called Dish's Memory Lane Pastry. It is another instant turn rate move that FR charges. It will grant the party brave by 100% of Ignis's own initial brave. It will cancel any active Papa Bird and Baby Bowl buff, and it will grant the buff Memory Lane Pastry for 6 turns. Dish's Papa Bird and Baby Bowl, the HP command is an instant turn rate move that FR charges, granting the party brave by 30% of his own max brave, canceling any Memory Lane Pastry buff, and granting Papa Bird and Baby Bowl for 6 turns. That's not the only HP commands he has, by the way. He has different versions. Depending on which buff you choose, you're going to be getting one of 2 attacks. The first attack will be HP attack Pastry, which will first increase Ignis's brave by 300% of his own initial brave, and then it will deal 8 attacks, granting party brave by 80% of the HP damage dealt, and filling Ignis's EX gauge by 20%. PNB Bowl, the other HP attack, will first grant party brave by 30% of his own max brave, and then it is a high turn rate attack, dealing 9 HP attacks with 150% splash, filling the EX gauge by 20%. Overwhelm his EX, it will grant party brave by 80% of his own max brave first, and then it will move his allies to after his turn with the selected ally first. And after that, it is a high turn rate attack that deals 15 HP attacks by 100% of his own current brave. Sage Fire his LD, it will first increase his brave by 100% of his own initial brave and 30% of his own max brave. Then it will deal 7 AoE HP attacks, granting the buff Enhancement for 16 turns and inflicting onto all enemies Sage Fire for 8 turns. Pale Fire his FR will heal the party by 80% of the max HP, and if they reach the max health already, the FR can overheal by 30%. Resolution to Sever Destiny his BT lasts for 10 turns, gives a party HP cap up of 30%, and will grant his follow-up attack. Total Clarity his BT follow-up attack, 6 split HP attacks, granting the party brave by 80% of his own max brave, increasing brave by 50% of the HP damage dealt, and extend all active buffs by 1 turn. Let's get to Ignis's buffs and debuffs. First Aid will grant a party max brave up by 40%, Ambrosia will give Ignis an initial brave up by 20%, Memory Lane Pastry will give party debuff evasion rate up by 100%, as well as HP regen by 20% of the max HP. Enhancement his LD buff will give party fire enchant, and whenever Ignis attacks, he will inflict onto the target Sage Fire for 4 turns. The buff will also extend any of Ignis's casted buffs by 2 turns. Finally, the debuff Sage Fire is a fire resist down and also has brave poison by 80% of Ignis's own initial brave. Ignis's force conditions, you get a 40% whenever the HP on the person acting is at least 100%, and another 40% when the person has no debuffs after acting. Is Ignis's BT necessary? Abso-freaking-lutely 1,000,000%. The burst will give him his broken follow-up, and it's almost single-handedly what makes him go from just a good offensive support to broken sub-attack. His BT is what makes him. If you don't have his BT, there's really no reason to use him outside of other support units we have already. Should you pull for Ignis?
I got bronchitis.
Should you pull for Ignis? Let's start with the offensive aspects of him. He has very high tier damage. Among support units, he's the tippity top. That much is very obvious. But even among DPS units, he ranks very high among them as well. His ridiculous BT follow-up dealing 6 split HP attacks on top of his other attacks, which don't do horrible numbers by themselves. His EX dealing 15 HP attacks, his LD dealing 7 AoE, his HP dealing 8 to 9 HP attacks. Tack on that broken BT follow-up along with his attacks.
That's a lot of damage.
What I love also about Ignis, his BT effect lasts 10 turns, so you're gonna have a lot of chances and opportunity to utilize that follow-up and see his very high DPS potential. Keep in mind, with all this, he's really not supposed to be your main DPS. He's supposed to be more of a support unit. And on that end too, he's also really good. He has lots and lots of FR charging with him. You have basically 4 skills that you can use to FR charge. You have the skill 1, skill 2, as well as the transformed brave and HP commands. Now keep in mind, his FR charging is going to be slower because he has a BT follow-up attack, but just the sheer amount of charging you can do with him still makes him really good in my opinion. One thing also to note is with his memory lane pastry buff, giving the entire party a debuff evasion rate up, not even requiring an FR or a BT to do it, that's a really cool thing to have. With his FR conditions, for the most part, they're very easy to accomplish. For most runs, for most boss fights, more often than not, you're going to have your HP at max. Granted, the enemy doesn't have HP poison. I'm going to get to that a little bit later. The second condition, having no debuffs after acting, remember that Ignis has party debuff evasion rate up by 100%. So if you weren't already debuffed before the memory lane pastry, yeah, the enemy's not going to be able to debuff you, and that second force condition is a gimme, really. On the downsides of Ignis, I gotta say, as much as I love his entire kit, the biggest weakness to me is actually with his FR. I know I just said it had generic FR conditions, but listen, we have a lot of units already who have generic FR conditions. He is not special with that. Also, keep in mind that his FR itself does not have any HP cap ups. So bear in mind that opposed to other FRs, you're not going to be dealing as much damage with his. And also, like I said before, with HP poisons, it can hurt his first FR condition, requiring your health to be at least max. He does have healing in his kit. He does have HP regen built into him, but remember that HP poisons trigger after all of those regen effects take place. You can heal up all of your health, but once that HP poison hits, you're back to not having max. And of all of his attacks, none of his HP attacks give healing. His LD, his EX doesn't give healing. His BT follow-up doesn't give healing. The only attack that gives healing directly is from his FR attack. So if it's Ignis's turn and you need to heal in order to reach that 100%, Ignis can still heal and his BT follow-up will still trigger, but in the damage department, it's much better for you to deal an attack. Second off, as much as I really like that he has debuff evasion, the buff that gives his debuff evasion isn't tied to the strongest version of his HP. The HP difference, 8 HP attacks to 9 HP attacks, it's not the biggest difference in the world. So even if you use that HP attack variant, you're still going to be doing really good damage, but you're not going to be dealing the strongest damage. One other thing I want to note with Ignis is with his second FR condition not being debuffed at all. While yes, he does have debuff evasion, he has no way to cleanse, from what I've seen at least. So if you're debuffed already and you activate Ignis's FR, that's a problem. You're going to have to find some other way to cleanse it off. It's not hard, mind you, because we have so many different options to cleanse through units and calls, but it still doesn't change the fact that he can't do it himself. And lastly, even though I've said his attack power is very high, he is restricted to kind of a niche weapon class. He is a dagger unit compared to short sword units, compared to great sword units, compared to unique units. The dagger class isn't all that common for DPS units. Not a lot of people will have access to that dagger Ultima weapon. If you want to use Ignis to his full damage potential, maybe you'll have to dismantle something in order to get that dagger, or you're just gonna have to suffer him not having a dagger. And don't get me wrong, his damage is still fantastic without it, but it's just so much better with an Ultima weapon. I personally already have the dagger Ultima weapon because I like using lock a lot, but a lot of the community, especially people who don't pay that premium Mog Pass to get extra Providence scores, they might not have that dagger Ultima weapon available to them. What are your plans to pull for Ignis? I'm personally going to be gemming, possibly even pitying him. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!